Do you think of yourself as a modern-day scribe?
Yes, I do. As a matter of fact, the library and what we're in, when I began it on 9/11/2001, it announced itself as the hieroglyph of the human soul. And I, 10 years later, said, well, what's the acronym? And it turns out it's THOTHS, or Thoth's Library, or Thoth to the ancient Egyptians. Thoth was the scribe. He was the great inventor of languages. And I do feel this great feeling in my art. As a matter of fact, with my Codex Tor books, I spent over, I think, 24 years working with language, working with writing, and so over the years, I've felt that I have numerous inner scribes. As a matter of fact, I once felt this absolute delight from these inner scribes because I didn't know consciously what I was doing. I was allowing it more like a dance to move through me, and from the energy, I would be taken on a journey. And these inner scribes had, from what I could figure, had spent so many lives being so accurate that they fought all of their lives to just let it go, like with calligraphy. And so I was the great fortunate one that could just let it go. But I do feel, I feel those scribes across the ages always going, yes, Pharaoh, very good idea.
Keep going.
Oh, okay.
You want to make reference to the books?
Yeah, my journey as a scribe really began as an actor because I wasn't trying to do something like be a scribe. It was actually the byproduct of trying to connect with energy. As a matter of fact, what started it all was when I was in acting school at Juilliard. I used paint as a way of connecting with emotion and with breath. But in that, I also found gesture. And then I started writing just because I was very interested in language. And I said, well, we write from left to right. So I started writing right to left and up and down. And I spent actually a very long time just experimenting. It looked like shorthand. It looked like gibberish. But then suddenly, after attending this rhythmic writing, suddenly it started almost like a dancer, but the dance gets in the body. It started to inwardly inform my hand. And not that I knew what I was writing, but there was always a sense of melodic correctness. In other words, like a dancer, knowing that the gesture was right, knowing, like music, that the resolution was somehow satisfying. So I've always used my pen and my brush as a way of asking questions. On 9/11/2001, the watcher language is what came through me. And that's what this entire, the hieroglyph of the human soul, my painted library, my 3D studio is written in. It's written in the language of the watchers. And what's amazing about it is that the watchers have taken me on a journey. Again, I'm not illustrating anything. I feel much more like a jazz musician following a riff. But in this riff that's been going on for 17 years, the watchers, this language, are telling me that the quality of who we are is sentient, it's not objective, and that if we ask the right questions, we will open doors of wonder and possibility. But because it's a creative process, it must come from relationship. And so that's what I've spent my life really cultivating, is a relationship with the creative spirit, which is why my painting is in my home, why the hieroglyph of the human soul is in domestic space, because I really feel a lot of these qualities of writing, of the languaging, of perception, come from a place where we feel safe, where we say, like a gardener, at least here, let's allow this to matter. And so that's been my relationship with the Codex Tor. I wanted to know, and so I bound these books blank. I went to a bookbinding class. I wanted to know how to make the book. So I made the book, I bound it blank, and then I spent 24, 25 years in the 2 volumes. And I created over 500 images. And it ended up that Flying Lotus, who's quite a popular musician, used my Codex Tor imagery for his Cosmogramma album, which was very well received. So that was the delight. This sense of the needing to know not the, in a sense, the conveying of what does this mean, but really where language itself became like the notes on the piano. I was able to play those notes and find the musicality came out visually. And when I looked at the visuals, then it came back to me to say, now that you've grown the garden, we can have a different conversation than thinking about growing the garden.
So your tarot,
Yes.
how that,
My tarot preceded the library, and what I'd like to say about the upstairs, it's upstairs in the library. We have the relationship of the imagination, but downstairs where my tarot is, all of the original drawings, which I spent 17 years creating, and my book Tarot Revisioned as well, I wanted to understand the nature of the psyche. How are we wired? I'm an actor by profession, so the question wasn't what to believe, but how to embody. So I used that tool of approach. I didn't act as, I'm a master of the tarot and I know everything and I'm going to tell you what you don't know. But actually I entered it humbly, in the same way as playing a character. If I was playing Hamlet in the old days, I wouldn't have just approached it intellectually. It would have been through the rehearsal, through that process. So I've been educated by my journey into the archetypes because they're not based on any other visual imagery, although they are based on this deep philosophical system that helps us understand the way we're wired. I like to think of the tarot as the piano, meaning that the archetypes are actually like piano keys. They're saying that all of the characters are constantly in the play. So of course you hate the devil. You're supposed to. That's the nature of this reality. But it's a character in a play. It's not meant to be taken really as a reality, but actually as a set of qualities. And so that's why the tarot became also very prophetic for me, because my world archetype, which is, we think of the World Trade Center, is dated 9/11/1986. It's very prophetic because it's 15 years to the day of the tragedy of 9/11 and the collapsing of the false erections of money and God, the sense of I have more than you do. And the symbolism is that we fall from those vaulted stances of looking down on others and thinking we have more to coming back to the ground. And that's where the tarot on the ground floor helps us understand that, like Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz, and my tarot is in black and white, so like the Wizard of Oz, my black and white tarot is like Kansas. We are always dealing with the black and white world. How do we navigate it? So the tarot became a great navigational tool. And as a matter of fact, when I put people in the wheel of the tarot, I say, now, start that wheel spinning. And it becomes like a gyroscope. And if you think of that, the gyroscope keeps us balanced. It's almost like the library upstairs saying, I want you to know that you can trust your imagination. You can give yourself passionately to these things, but you will not be drawn overboard. So this is what the helpful nature of understanding the symbolical reality we're in. And one last point, we have a President Trump. And Trumps are what the archetypes are called in the tarot tradition. So we have the Trump Tower. If we think of this in terms of the symbolical field of the tarot, the Trump Tower is the 16th key, which is Mars. It's very interesting that our president is orange. If I were writing a satire, it would seem a little over the top. But it's very important because once we understand the symbolical theater, we're not reacting to the character. We're starting to understand, well, what is Mars? Mars is fire. Mars sets everything on fire. And it doesn't matter because everyone's angry. Everyone is knowing what they hate but forgetting what they love. And that, in a very interesting and very remarkable way, is what happened this year where I live in Malibu, because we're in Malibu Park and we've lost 170 homes around us. And it's not that big of a neighborhood because a fire swept into Malibu on 11/9, not 9/11, but 2 years to the day of the election. And the fire swept in saying, we have become brittle and dry. Tell me what you hate and I'll burn down your house. As if to say that anger has replaced compassion and people are knowing what they love but forgetting what they hate. It's the opposite. They're actually knowing what they hate and forgetting what they love. And I do feel like that's the key of the creative spirit, the imagination. It's trying to bring us back home. It's trying to say we can't be against our neighbor, we have to think more about our domestic space, and that's why this began on 9/11. I looked at my wife and children and said, I have to tell them a story about why being human matters, and why no matter what we think, for all the pain and difficulty, we are a remarkable species that transmutes our despair into the blues. We take our lack of understanding and create art. We try to make sense of the difficulty, and we choose to write a poem rather than pick up a gun. Oh, I think it's a great challenge, but I see so many that have been cultivating not great gardens to convince the neighbors that they should believe something else, but small gardens, and inviting, like we do here, friends and fellow inspired beings to say, let's get together and say yes rather than yikes. Let's remember to express that which we love rather than that which we hate. So that's the story. That is the story of the journey of birth into self-reflection, matter, mater, mother, the story of becoming human. So a lot of this is the story that takes us on a journey that begins with the mystery of birth, of whole and holy birth, meaning we are whole and holographic, but we learn by this journey on the mirror to take the journey to the mirror of self-reflection. And that's what the room is actually saying. But we've finally come full circle. The tarot is saying we've come full circle. This is telling us that we each now are not born into time, but into creation. And that's why only art, the language of creation, only love, which is the language of art because it comes from devotion, can reveal these things. Because at the end of the day, this doesn't prove anything, but actually invites us to say, maybe we're more interesting than we think. And that's what why I love this journey, because it doesn't say or insist, it suggests and invites.
You think of yourself as a visionary, obviously.
I find that the way I think is ultimately visionary, because I do see beyond the linoleum of things. As a matter of fact, this is painted on linoleum, and I like to say that humans, we have a tendency to stop at the linoleum and fear anything deeper than what we know objectively as possibly dangerous. But this is actually saying, no, you don't have to change the ordinary. You have to realize that this is the ground upon which to find your unique expression of how do we do this thing called being human.
Anything else?
Just remember the library. That the library says that each of my books are essential. You are essential to the library. And that we can't know who we are or why we are until we pull our head out of our book, out of our time, and stand in the library of what does it mean to be human. Because like a great tree, we realize it's always been the struggle. But our beauty is that in spite of the struggle, we choose to bring forth beauty. We choose to bring forth poetry. We choose to love rather than fear. And if we fear, we choose to use it in a way that we turn into something we can share with others. Maybe a song, maybe a poem. Painting, all of it.
Okay, I'm talking to
Leigh McCloskey. Linoleum. The linoleum floor. It's the best story that we have because it says the difficulty is we all think we're linoleum. We're all ordinary. We're not gold. But this is actually saying something far more remarkable. It says trust the linoleum, trust the ordinary. From this ground, the impossible, the multidimensional, and the infinite will grow. But first, put your feet in the ordinary and stop trying to be more than you are. You already are something remarkable.
The Miracle, the Gift.
Yeah.
So this is your studio?
This is my studio. This is the, it calls itself the Hieroglyph of the Human Soul, THOTHS, Thoughts Library, that began on 9/11, 2001, is amazing because it is also multidimensional. When we put on 3D glasses, it becomes fixed multidimensionality. The opposite of computer tricking us with an optical illusion. This is saying, if you look at me one way, put the glasses on, look at me again, I'm a relationship. So that's the key, having a relationship rather than a critique together. And what's amazing is with 3D glasses, this becomes multidimensional, fixed multidimensionality, not a computer tricking us, but actually a suggestion saying, if you look at me one way, look at me again, I'm a relationship. And because it's neither one thing or the other, it's neither this or this. Somehow it transcends both. That's the mystery. And also a little humor.